The black community is losing over 4.2 billion every single year, but we never actually tackle this one specific topic, this one specific issue that's losing our community over 4.2 billion every single year. We never talk about single parenthood and how that impacts the family, but more specifically impacts the next generation. So we're going to address this head on. Single parenting or single parenthood never gets discussed, but yet it's secretly draining or ripping 4.2 billion pounds from underneath our feet every single year. Right from the beginning, I want to address this. This is not blame. This isn't even a video specifically at a man or a woman. It's just about the economic side of single parenthood. So if you are considering leaving your family behind, I want you to understand the impact that that's going to have on that child, their children, and the next generation. All of this is based on numbers. The main purpose of this video is to show us how the breakdown, the falling out, the breaking up of families is significantly slowing down the wealth creation today, but more specifically, the future in our community. So if we look at some of the data that I've got here, pulled from the Office of National Statistics, and I've pulled this data specifically from the 2021 census, there are roughly around 2.5 to 3 million black people living in the UK. And then I pulled some government data from the Ethnicity Facts and Figures in 2021, and that's the closest report I could get data from. That shows that roughly 24% of black households with dependent children are from lone parent households. So I think that should sink in for a moment, because we've got to have this conversation. That is 4 times higher than white British households, where their number is closer to about 6%. Now, this video is not specifically, and maybe we can talk about that at another date, why. We can address the whys later, but I want to show you from an economic standpoint, from a financial standpoint, how this is draining and stealing money from us. If we look at the numbers, if the black population in the UK is roughly, let's say 3 million, that equates to around 1.25 million black households in the UK, adjusting for the average household size. Now let's go back to our 24%. If 24% of those households with dependent children are single parent families, that 24% gives us around 300,000 single parent black households. So I hope you can see where I've derived these numbers from. I want to be very clear on this. The ONS, where I've got most of this information from, or gathered most of my research from, doesn't actually publish divorce or single parent data by ethnicity. So we've had to infer and pull some data together from different sources to come up with that 24%. However, I believe it's conservative. It's reasonable, but I've used it purely to help us understand, or maybe put together this financial model so we can understand the numbers better. So if you are someone that's very specific on numbers, which you should be, which I should also be, but I couldn't find the specific data, we could add 10% or maybe also deduct 10% just to counter both sides. In 2023, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation released a poverty report saying that the average single parent in the UK has a median disposable income of around £23,000, which compared to households where they were both parents is around £37,000. That is a £14,000 difference per household per year. I want you to really sit on that for a moment, because the next set of numbers is going to blow your mind. Now, if we apply the 300,000 single household or single parent household that we spoke about previously, 300,000 times the £14,000 loss equals the £4.2 billion economic financial loss that we are experiencing every single year in our community due to single parent households. That's effectively the same as saying that's £4.2 billion that wasn't saved, £4.2 billion that wasn't invested, £4.2 billion that wasn't used for further education or university fees, £4.2 billion that wasn't reinvested to grow or improve the black community. That is money that could have been compounded to create significant wealth and level up the playing field and change trajectories of families and generations. But instead, it disappears into survival. It goes into the single parent's pocket in order to survive, as opposed to building wealth. I went a little bit deeper, and I want to talk about that, if you will bear with me. I wanted to break down so we feel the pain of what that £4.2 billion could have represented. As a property investor, the pain of not being able to use extra money to buy property and build wealth through property, because We all know that property ownership is the one most guaranteed way of creating wealth, but more importantly, generational wealth. So this £4.2 billion really hurts me to hear, and I want to share that pain with you. The Resolution Foundation in 2022, again, the data is 3-4 years old. I can only assume it's got slightly better or it's got slightly worse, but we're going to use the 2022 figures. They suggest that single parent households have a home ownership rate of just 29%. Catch this, compared to households, coupled households, who are at 65%. Even if a fraction, even if a small part of that £42 billion was redirected to property or real estate, as our Americans would say, real estate. That's a terrible accent. I'll carry on. That £4.2 billion could have funded around 85,000 properties every single year, assuming, based on my numbers, around a £50,000 deposit. When we really think about it, we can blame this institution and this organization and this country and this person, but we've got to have a conversation about what we're doing within our community. Effectively bleeding money, handing over money that we could use to create wealth. That is around 84,000 black households that lose the opportunity for home ownership every single year. By the way, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Am I far off on this? Do you see some sense in this? What are your thoughts? And what can we do to improve this situation? Number two, the average cost in the UK to start a business, a full-fledged business, is around £12,000. £4.2 billion could easily finance around 350,000 opportunities or startup businesses in the black community. Number three, £4.2 billion could pay for tuition, 3 years tuition for university students within the black community. I could go on and on. 4.2 billion invested in a medium investment, paying maybe 5% a year in just 10 years could exceed over 50 billion in community wealth, community opportunities, wealth that can be passed on to the next generation. So when we talk about 4.2 billion, as I said, there are going to be some people that disagree with the number. Cool, not a problem. We'll shave it down by 10%. We'll also up it by 10%. Even if you want to take it down by 10%, 15%, 20%, there is still a significant loss. This really blew my mind and angered me to some degree, which is why I went down this rabbit hole to try and understand it better and understand the numbers better. And I thank you for watching this and allowing me to explain the numbers to you. The median wealth of couple households, two-parent households in the UK across the board, this is across the board, is around £297,000 compared to single-parent households, which is £57,000. Can you see the difference? That is a £240,000 gap per family. And if we multiply that across the 300,000 use case, or the 300,000 number that we're using, that effectively represents a £72 billion gap. This stuff blows my mind. The reason I really wanted to make this video is because I came across some information talking about the power of being a single mom or being a single dad. And yes, there is some truth. There is some power there. But from an economic point of view, there is no power. So if we are serious about leveling up the playing field or serious about building some form of wealth or generational wealth, we've got to start having real conversations about how do we encourage men to stay in their relationships and step up as fathers? How do we encourage women to stay in their relationship and step up as mothers? This is not a blame game. This is for us as a community to encourage families to stay together as opposed to breaking them apart. We have to work together or have conversations and address the structural, economic, systemic, however you want to call it, the impact of a fragmented, broken family or household. Because £4.2 billion, in my opinion, isn't chicken change. And £4.2 billion in the right hands can significantly change the trajectory of multiple lives. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I understand this is probably a complex topic. Maybe I'm not qualified to have this conversation, which is why I've tried to stay away from the emotional side of stuff. But from an economic point of view, I hope I've done the conversation some justice. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Catch you in another one.